Chasity Melvin here with Chris Ekstrand, NBA consultant, longtime contributor to PIT. You have an expert analysis on the tournament. This is the final night, the championship game. Tell us your thoughts about the final day.
There were some outstanding performances. I thought that actually my pick for the tournament MVP would have been a guy who didn't even play in the championship game. Josh Reeves of Penn State was just outstanding. If we kept deflections, and we don't keep deflections here, but if we did, he would easily have won that category in this tournament. He's the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, so everybody knows he's a great defender. But his defense was not just great, it was elite. It was elite defense. Plus, I think he made more threes in these 3 games than he made in 10 games at Penn State. He was just on. And when a guy who's an elite defender who can guard multiple positions is also scoring, because that's not normally one of his strengths, that's outstanding basketball.
A key point, again, about Joshua Reeves was the last person that they added to the list here for the PIT tournament. So to add to what you said, he was also a great finisher above the rim. Like, he had an all-around game. What do you think he showed the NBA scouts with that athletic finishes above the rim?
I think that he showed that, he doesn't have to be a featured offensive player to contribute offensively. In other words, they weren't running him off screens where they were trying to get him shots. What he did well was move without the ball. And when there was a little open space, he took advantage of that and took the ball strong to the basket. There's never been a question about his physical strength. He's a very strong guy. He's one of those guys where when you watch him, other people are the ones bouncing off of him, not the other way around. And as a player, I know you know this. You always look for that sort of thing. It's not always the bulkiest guys, but sometimes there's guys who have that wiry strength. And same thing in the women's game. It's the same thing. Some people, you just have people bounce off them. And those are players who are going to always be able to create a little bit of space when they take the ball to the basket.
Talking about bouncing off of people, the MVP tonight was Chris Clemens from Campbell. He's averaged 30-plus points the entire 4 years at Campbell. I think he made history. Tonight he was voted the MVP.
Yes.
Why do you think was it because just of his electrifying finishes early in the first game? I mean, he had if you missed watching the tournament, you caught it late. He had an unbelievable dunk early in the first game. But tonight he was a little bit off, but he was still able to get the crowd in it somehow. Was it just his will? Why do you think he was chosen as MVP?
I think 2 things. I think just the history of the tournament since I've been here, which is the last 25 tournaments, I think that the voters have tended to try to pick the MVP from the winning team. I don't personally agree with that because it's only 3 games. And I think if somebody's outstanding in 3 games, if their team finishes 3rd or 4th even, then that's the guy who's the MVP. Clemens is dynamic. He's exciting. There's no getting around that. When you see a 5'9" guy split a double team at the top of the 3-point arc and go all the way and dunk it over a 6'11" guy, that's memorable. People are going to remember that 20 years from now at this tournament. If you were here to see that, you don't forget it. That's like watching, Julius Erving go underneath against Mark Landsberger and put it up on the other side, over Kareem on the reverse. That's one of those iconic plays. Well, at this level, that play by Clemens was iconic. From a purist standpoint like myself, who watches everything and looks at every stat, I know that he shot under 40% from the field for the tournament. So it's hard for me to get excited about him as the MVP. He's a very good player. I love Chris Campbell. I live in the same state where he played, so I saw him a lot these last couple of years. He can play better than this, and maybe that's where I fall out, is that I think that this wasn't his best, but he was perhaps a dynamic player on the team that won the thing, and he won the whole thing. They won the whole thing, so props to him. But you look at what Reeves did. He moved the needle with the NBA people with the way he played.
Interesting that you point out about moving the needle. There were a couple of guys that made the all-tournament team. Let's talk about some of the bigs in the action tonight. I think undersized Jarrell Brantley for College of Charleston. He put on a show tonight. He seemed to come with a lot of energy. Juwan Morgan, Indiana, did I pronounce his name right? Yeah. He was phenomenal protecting the rim. Talk about those guys that are kind of tweeners and the way what they showed here in the tournament.
Absolutely. Well, I'll take Morgan first. Juwan Morgan from Indiana. He's a player that, in this day and age, again, at his position, people want rim protection, which is shot blocking, which he doesn't really provide. And they want a dynamic leaper, which he doesn't provide. However, what he showed in this tournament is how effective a guy who doesn't maybe have that can be. His footwork was outstanding. He was able to get the ball on the block and fake one way and go the other way. Pretty simple play. We've all done it, like playing in the post. But he made that work for him. He always seemed to have the defender off balance. When the defender thought he was going to go back towards the middle, he went to the baseline, and vice versa. When the guy was really pressing up on him, he'd shoot a fall away and he'd make that. So he had an outstanding day today, and he really played well throughout the tournament. I've always been a fan of his. I just think that in this day and age, with the leapers and the incredible athletes that play up front in the NBA, oftentimes a guy like him doesn't get a full shot, and they end up being like a EuroLeague All-Star instead of being an NBA star. So, yeah, that's kind of where I feel. On Jarrell Brantley, first of all, he's got the physique that makes other people intimidated. When he gets ahead of steam and he's going to the rim, you think to yourself, is this worth being out the next 2 weeks in order to take this charge? Or should I get out of the way and just let him do it? But the thing that surprised me in this tournament was he's sort of a guy who doesn't take a lot of threes. He makes a fair amount when he takes them, but I saw him in college a lot, and he was a guy who took maybe like 2 and he'd make 1 in a game. Here, he was open a lot for him because he moved well without the ball, and he was making them. So if you add that to all the other things he does, he has a great spin move. For a guy with the kind of bulk and the kind of muscle that he has, he spins quick and he spins tight. And by that I mean, he's going right to the rim. When he spins, he's not getting further away from the rim. He's spinning tight and he goes right at the rim. So he played just tremendously. And, I think that the way he played today is indicative of the way he plays when he plays his best.
Another quick question. Not only were there NBA scouts and GMs here, but there were also former NBA players as coaches. Could you talk about Brandon Rush and a couple of other 3 females here that are participating in the program, and your role in assisting them with their first opportunity to coach?
Well, I don't want to take any credit. We know that they're basketball experts. They may not have spent a lot of time coaching, but that doesn't mean they don't have anything to impart. When you've played at a high level, and I'm talking to somebody who played at a very high level, you know that after a certain number of years, some things just become clear in your mind. And you can help a younger, less experienced player with those things. So my role is just to, say, if you have any questions, I've been around the block with this tournament for 25 years, so it's more about the special characteristics of this tournament. The quick turnarounds, the fact that you only have an 8-man roster, things like that. I can help them with understanding just the process. But there's nothing I'm going to tell, those guys and ladies about basketball because, they're all savants. I mean, you look at, Lee Nailon is the one guy I knew, more coming into this. And, Lee's a great shooter. I was kidding with him the first day. I said, well, I saw the bigs on your roster, and they're all like energy players and rebounders. There's not one of them who could shoot as well as you. So he laughed, but he was like, yeah, you're probably right. But, I think that it was great to have an ODU, icon here coaching. She did a tremendous job. You see the players who are veterans, they have so much to give the younger players because they've been in so many different situations. They've played in situations where they're the key player. They've probably played in situations where they're maybe the second option. They've also played in a situation where maybe they were a role player. They were still starting, but they were maybe like the 4th option, say, on a team. And they figured out how to make themselves vital to their team with all different sorts of things. Sometimes it's defense, sometimes it's passing. One of the things, if you're somebody who can really put the ball in the basket, if you can really score, which, again, I'm talking to somebody who could do that, you find that you're going to draw those defenders. Even if you're not specifically trying to do that, after you have scored a couple buckets, all of a sudden those defenders are cheating towards you. And that opens it up for all your teammates. If you have that ability to have the vision to see them open, just by osmosis kind of, you can be a catalyst. You can be somebody who sets other people up. And, so I saw that. I saw them trying to teach the players here who are the featured scorers, look, you don't have to go 1 on 3. Once you've scored, say, 10 points and a half, In the second half, the coaches have already said, hey, let's shut down that guy. Well, when you wheel to the basket and now there's 2-3 defenders there, guess what? All you have to do is make a simple pass back out to the top of the arc or diagonal or whatever, and there's somebody wide open for a shot. And at this level, these teammates are good enough where if they're wide open, they're probably going to make it.
This is true. Thank you, Chris, for your expert analysis. This year, you've been doing this for 25 years. This is the 67th year, am I correct?
That's
with PIT?
right, in both cases.
Where does this tournament this year rank amongst them? 1 through 10.
I think that...
Last question,
okay.
really quick.
No, that's
1
fine.
through 10.
I think that it was an excellent tournament. I would put it in my top 5.
Okay.
But I will say that I thought in the last 2 years previous to this, that it was a little bit stronger in the front court, just a little bit. But we had, Jonathan Williams, who's in the NBA, and Jock Landale from St. Mary's, who's playing for Partizan. So there were a couple of headliners in the front court last year that, and 2 years ago we had Derek White, who we all knew was going to be in the NBA, no doubt. So those were a little different, but this is a very strong field. I think top to bottom, it was a very solid group. There were very few guys who you said, wow, he really looks out of place here. Everybody had something.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris, again for your
Thank you,
expert
Chasity.
analysis, and thanks for joining us all with PIT here.